Cool. So we just did our ramen raider, ramen rater, not ramen raider. That's a different thing. Our practice go challenge, and before we jump into it, I looked at a bunch of folks' code and talked to some folks about stuff they were going through, getting into it. Drop in the chat 1 to 5 how you feel like you did on it, and if anyone has anything they want to say about like how they're feeling, now's a great time, or questions specifically they want to ask about it. Yeah, lots of 1s and 2s. Awesome. Cool. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4.5, 5. Great. Full range. Cool. So I think the way that I would like to do this is just kind of walk through doing the challenge, and then we will talk through all the parts. Feel free to interrupt me at any time when I'm talking too much, probably, or too fast, and ask about anything that doesn't make any sense or anything you'd like more clarification on, and we will do that for sure. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. Share screen. There we go. We got chat over there. We got you over here. We got panel controls. Awesome. Sweet. So I have pulled down Ramen Raider here. Here we are. I'm going to open it up in code. Boop. And I will actually open right over here. There we go. Much better than this. Cool. So yeah, I don't need that window at all. Bring so many windows. There we go. Cool. So here's our thing here. I've got it pulled down here, and I don't actually need terminal anymore. So great. Goodbye. Awesome. So this is like I've been repeating over and over again, exercising our 3 main things that we are looking at in phase 1, are making fetch requests, are manipulating the DOM, and handling events to do stuff with. So this is an app to theoretically rate ramen. We're going to grab a bunch of stuff here, click it, show some information, and maybe if we get to it, update some things. So to set up, we're going to run our JSON server here. So I'm just going to open up the terminal with control backspace here, and see I've got access to all our stuff. I just had to redo my npm stuff, so I think I have JSON server installed. Let's find out. Well, my finger's installed. Yeah. JSON, great. So we can see this is running on localhost 3000. If I had something, I don't know if folks had this trouble. If you have something running on a port, you can't run another thing on that port. So it will give you the mildly helpful message that it's being used. Just make sure that you have any other thing that you're running closed up before you start this, and you should be good. Alternately, you could run it on a different port, but that's for later. So this is what our data looks like. We have our JSON server running. We do a get for this resource, the ramens, and we get an array of objects, and each object has ID, name, restaurant, image, rating, and a comment. And so that's what we're going to be working with. So we know that we can fetch this with a get. And I think someone is unmuted. Got some background noise. Yeah, there's been some adventures and people not muting in meetings lately, so good times. So let's go ahead and see what we're actually looking at here. Oh, and if we want to get an individual ramen, we can give it an ID. I think we still got someone here. What do we got? Can make it go. Boom. All right. So if we want to get an individual ramen by ID, we can do that by slapping the ID on the end. Great. And yeah, so this is it. Let's take a look at first our deliverables and then what our code is going to look like. Probably not going to dive super into the advanced deliverables yet. So we might do that this afternoon, or might do it later, or might never do it. We'll see. But the important part is these core deliverables. We're going to, as a user, see all the ramen images in the div with the ID of ramen menu. when the page loads, request data from the server to get all the ramen objects. That should probably go first. Display the image for each of the ramen using an image tag inside the ramen menu div. So we're going to make a fetch, grab all the data, and then iterate through that data and display it on the page. We're going to be clicking on an image from that div and seeing all the info displayed in another div. And we want to be able to create a new ramen after submitting that. It's going to be added to the div, but for this basic part, since we're not posts isn't on the code challenge, we're not going to persist it to the database. We might dip into that, but we'll see. So some of the things I was hearing from folks was that without tests or without other guidance, it's hard to figure out where to start, and that is super real. And the dumb advice is just start at the beginning with the simplest thing, right? Hopefully your requirements are written well. These are written okay. So but part of your job as a developer is going to be looking at requirements, which will not be good a lot of the time, and figuring out what it means on a real project. If you have the resources mentally, emotionally, and time-wise, if you get bad requirements, you can go back to your project manager and say, hey, I can guess what this means, but we're going to have to do it twice probably if that happens. So always try and get clear requirements. And that goes for here too. If there's requirements written either in a lab or an exercise or a code challenge or anything else, and it's not clear, ask for clarification, because and that means that it's not written well. It's not you, it's them. So that being said, let's look at the smallest thing that we can put together here at the beginning. So let's just concentrate on the first requirement here. The effect is we want to see all the ramen images in the div with the ID of ramen menu. So we want to make this part show up here up top. To do that, when the page loads, we're going to request the data from the server. And this is our server here. We're going to get all those ramen objects, which look like this here. And then we're going to display each image. And since we know that our request here is going to be an array, or it's going to return, our response is going to be an array of objects, we know we have an array that we can iterate over with for each or any other method we want. There's JavaScript, it's a million ways to do things. Some better than others. So what we're probably going to do is do a fetch to that URL. We're going to grab that data and we're going to do something with that data that puts them in image tags inside that ramen menu div. Great. That's like one thing that's made of a bunch of things. And again, programming is all just like breaking stuff apart and putting it back together, breaking apart our requirements and putting it together into a thing. So we're going to be working in this one JavaScript file, just looking at our HTML here. Sort of look at the landscape. It is loading this with defer, so we don't need to worry about DOM content loaded. You will almost never need to do that in the real world unless you're looking at someone else's older code, or maybe someone wants it to be supported on older browsers. Regardless, we have defer, we're going to use it, so we don't need to worry about doing the on DOM content loaded stuff. Great. And here is our ramen menu, just an empty div. Great. So we have an ID of ramen-menu, and now we have a good idea of what we want to do. So to kind of talk through it here, when the page loads, this is going to run console log, and we know that that is going to hopefully run when we get. How do we know? Let's run it. I've wasted so much time in my life editing JavaScript and having it not work because the file wasn't hooked up or I was editing the wrong file. Just to be sure, I always like console log the file, just make sure it's there. I'm going to run this with Light Server. You can run it with the go live thing or anything else you want. Light Server is just a package. You can npm install -g Light Server and you'll have that available. What that does is look at the index HTML in your current directory and serve it up for you. So this is what our page looks like now. And since ideally it is loading up that JavaScript, there we go, booyah. I just hit Option Command J to bring up the console. And I can close it the same way. I'm going to keep it open. So we know the JavaScript file is opening and we are ready to roll. So what is our first job? Our first job is going to be load in the not sushis, it's ramens from our API. And we're going to iterate through the ramens, and we're going to display each one in an image tag. Cool. And that's one thing in quotes. So we have our API here, and it looks like this. So I'm just gonna, I like when I'm working with APIs to throw them in constants at the top here. Get rid of my booyah. So I'm just gonna say API equals this with the H, so it works. And so that's our endpoint we're gonna be working with, just so I don't have to type the whole thing if I need to use it more than once. So first thing we're going to do is load in the ramens from our API, and that's just going to be with a fetch. So hopefully we're all good with fetches right now. I'm going to fetch from the API. And fetch returns a promise. Promises have .thens that run when they're done. So I'm going to do our little JSON dance and do our thens with our turn the response into JSON. Response JSON. Cool. So that will get us the JSON, and what we want to do is do something with it. So the first thing I'm always pretty much going to do is I'm just going to console log the JSON. Console the log. And here's the point. So .then is just a function on a promise, right? That function just happens to take another function as an argument. Higher order function, if you want to call it that. So we can just pass a function to .then. Doing this is basically the same as doing this, right? Because console log takes an argument to log out. And we're just writing a little function here that says, hey, this function takes JSON and passes it to console log. I like doing this, even though sometimes I go back and forth, just because it reads a little bit better. And that's a rule 2 thing. Like, it's more readable, understandable, debuggable. So I'm just saying fetch from the API, then turn it into JSON, then console log it. So I know what I'm getting into here. And let's see if that does it. Yeah. The other cool thing about Lightserver is it automatically reloads when you change your stuff. So I don't need that. So it looks like we are fetching from our API. We are getting the data back, and that is great. So I think what I'm going to do next is iterate through the ramens and put them on the page. So what I like to do here is I'm still going to put a function here, and this function is going to do that thing. So I'm going to call the function something like render ramens. Which means I need to write that function. And that function is going to take some JSON, because that's what that last then is passing in. So and I can verify that. Say console log JSON. And this JSON is only the JSON that exists inside here, right? Just to verify that these two things have nothing to do with anything outside them. It could be, a sandwich, and it's going to be the same thing. So as long as we're referring to that variable that's passed in, we can console log it. Hopefully we get the same thing. And there we go. Sweet. So we know our function that's rendering the JSON is getting the right data. Great. So let's iterate. In fact, I'm not going to call it JSON because that's not descriptive. JSON could be anything. I'm kind of a stickler for semantic naming of things. So when I go back to my code a month later, I'm not like, who the fuck wrote this? I'm going to say this is going to be ramens, because that's what it is. And I'll match that up there. So cool. I'm writing out our ramens. So I want to iterate through each one. You can move lines around with option up arrow or down arrow. So I'm going to take my ramens. I'm going to iterate through it. Probably for the for each. Sounds good. If I can spell it right. And for each takes a function. And I could say, ramen, do some stuff. I think I'm just going to go ahead and write another function to put each ramen on there. So instead of writing the function inline, I'm just going to say for each ramen, I want to render the ramen singular. So this is going to be a function. I'll write that function. And it's going to take a ramen. Again, has nothing to do with anything outside the function, only lives inside that function. So get rid of that. Not looking good. So right now, we're grabbing our data. We are passing that data to this render ramens function. That render ramens function is using for each to iterate through that list. And each time we do it, we're going to render out the ramen. And again, simplest thing, I'm just going to console log it. So just to verify that this is doing what I think it's supposed to do, and render out each one. In this case, rendering is console logging. And boom, there we go. Great. So now we have a function that is doing something to each piece of ramen, each entry, I guess. Right now, render means console log, and that is not what we have been asked to do. We've been asked to put it on the page, so that's what we're going to do. So let's take a look at that again in a little bit more detail. Doesn't give more detail here. Great. So all we ask for here is displaying the image for each ramen using an image tag inside that div. Great. So we have that ramen menu div. This is a point where, so programming is all making these design decisions, right? I made the choice to put this API up here because I might want to use it in different places going forward. I'm not right now, so it doesn't need to be there. Similarly, you'll see or do putting when you get the elements you want to work with here, you can put it up top here. You can do constant ramen menu div is going to div. And I'll usually do document get element by ID, just to remind myself to always get elements by ID instead of query selecting them by class, because that's not recommended by me. But ramen menu. So this is my ramen menu div. That's a constant that's holding the element. You can do that there. That's totally fine. I think my current preference is to declare that as close as possible to where I'm going to use it, just so if I have another half dozen functions in here, I don't have to go searching around for when I do something with ramen menu div here. I don't want to have to look at all my code to find out what it is. I'm just going to declare it right where it is going to be used, which is here. And in fact, I can console log that out too. It's just a object, right? So I could look at that and look, there's all my divs. They're all the same div. But yeah, rule one, as long as it works, this satisfies my rule two. It is easy to understand and update. It doesn't quite get rule three, make it efficient, because if I really wanted to squeeze every little cycle out of this, I probably would want to put it up here so I'm not grabbing it every time I'm rendering a thing. This is JavaScript. If you wanted to be really fast, you should be writing in C. So worry about efficiency, absolute last. Premature optimization is the root of all evil. So that being said, I have my ramen menu div right here. I'm going to get I'm going to make a new image, I guess, right? So const ramen image. I'm going to create it. It's going to be an image. Fantastic. So images have a source ID, and it's asking me to put that image tag in. I'm gonna ditch these comments. I'm going to use the images source tag src to tell it what image to display. Image src. And so how do I know what image to display? Well, I've got this data here coming in, the ramen, and I know my data looks like this. So here's one of the ramens. It's going to have something conveniently called image. And those are all in the assets folder. Sweet. There they are. So that makes my job real easy here. Ramen image. Cool. And so I have my element, the image is set, and it's not going to do anything, right? Why is it not going to do anything? I have not.
Yeah, append it.
Boom. I have not appended it. So I have my ramen menu div right here. Ramen menu div. I like doing append. Some people like append child. For our purposes, they're the same. Append does a little bit more, and more importantly for me, it's 5 characters less than type and make mistakes in. So I go with append. And so I'm just going to append my ramen image there. I like to hit compulsively Command Shift F to format my code so everything looks nice. And hey, look at that. There we go. It did the thing we wanted it to. I think that is our first deliverable done, right? See all our ramen images, display the image. Yeah, that's it. Cool. So that part is where are we? Here we are. That is our first thing done. Questions before we go on? Anything in here that is not super clear yet?
I'm getting a weird syntax error on line. For you, would be line 8. It looks exactly the same for me. Ramen stop for each render ramen.
What does the syntax error say?
Let's see. Type error ramens for each is not a function.
Okay.
At render ramens.
Are you passing ramens into the function?
Yeah.
Are you calling the function from here?
Render ramens. Yep.
What happens when you console log out render ramens, like right here? I'm gonna guess it's undefined.
I get it shows up in my console.
Really?
Yeah, it's weird.
I'm curious. Can you paste your code into the chat so I can take a look at it? I'm intrigued. So one of the errors you're going to see all the time in JavaScript is blah 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 is not a function or not a property of a thing, and that usually means that the thing you're trying to call it in, your dot for each or dot whatever, the thing that you're calling on is undefined. Let's see. API is that fetch API is JSON render ramens. Aha. Anyone see what's going on here? Got it.
I see it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's super easy to miss. I still do it. not all the time, but enough that it hurts my heart.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. And this is like this part of like that felt really easy to me because I've seen this error 1 billion times. But it's not easy to any of you yet, I imagine, because you have not seen it 1 billion times. And really, that's the only way to learn that skill of debugging is to make a lot of mistakes and then take the time to figure out how to fix those mistakes. And we're like, you can write good code as much as you want, but until you write bad code, you're not really learning that much, in my opinion. So yeah, make mistakes and learn how to fix them. That's how to do it. Awesome. Any other questions about this bit of code here? Anything that's not super clear? Feeling good? Cool. Yeah. And this is the we like to talk about we're testing fluency, right? Even when talking through this took, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes maybe. Without talking, I've literally written code like this 10,000 times, not literally. So that fluency part is just like being able to look at a thing and being like, oh, I need to bam, bam, bam. It's kind of like being able to look at a sentence and seeing the whole sentence and understanding it instead of having to go through and figure out what each word is by looking at the letters. You can still do it. It just takes longer. And if this part takes you half an hour, you're probably not going to have a good time with the rest of it, or you might have a good time, but it might not get done. So, and that's the practice part, just building and burning. So especially like doing it with this is going to be great. My line is always do it until it gets boring. If you can knock this out in 5 minutes, you're looking really good for the code challenge. Yeah, and again, starting is the hardest part, looking at that blank page and not knowing what letter to type first, but also that blank page staring at you, under the pressure of the clock, which is completely artificial pressure. It's really hard. So that's when you just like take a breath, look at your requirements, and just figure out like what is the simplest thing that I understand how to do. Whether it's request the data, making a fetch when the page loads. Like you saw me do that. That is the simplest thing you can do. When the page loads, console log something just to get some characters on the page. And so, hey, my JavaScript works. I can actually write a line of JavaScript, even if it says hello. And then you can start going from there. It's all about breaking it down and putting it together. Cool. Feel free to interrupt as we go forward with more questions. I'm going to move on to our second requirement here. So click on an image from the Ramen menu div and see all the info about that ramen displayed inside the Ramen detail div where it says to do that. So if we look at our HTML again, which is here, a top tip, Command Shift P, Command P, and then you can open that up. Ramen menu, that's all good there. Ramen detail is where we want to throw stuff. So JavaScript, a bunch of different ways to do this. I'm going to do it when I probably talk about a couple others. So this is again our Ramen detail. We want to grab that ID or grab that div by ID. And then we're going to just set the source and the alt on that image. We're going to set the text of that H2, and we're going to set the text of that restaurant in the H3. Semantically, I'm not super happy about the names of these tags, but that's for another day. Awesome. So let's talk again about what we want to do here. When we click on an image, we want something to happen. So these are our images, and I'm going to add an event listener to it. You can add an event listener before or after you append. It doesn't care, because that is, unless the user somehow like clicks really fast before this line of code executes, very unlikely, and they will probably click another time. So yeah, as long as there's a click handler on it, you're good, whether it's before or after you append. I've had people ask about that. So let's add a click handler here, and that's going to be on the image. Add event listener. We're looking for a click, and we want to do something on that handler. So here's where I would probably write another function. I'm going to do it inline for right now, just to see something. Click handlers, all event handlers are functions that take the event itself as an argument. So I'm going to write a little inline function here. Call it E. And I'm just going to console log with that E. Well, I'm going to console log the event target source, maybe. I don't think that's going to do what I want to do, but we'll find out. Click. Yeah, great. So I know it's clicking. I could just have said whatever there. But I know we're clicking on a thing and it's saying something associated with that. I think this is one of the trickier parts, because it kind of relies on knowing about scope in your function. It's real easy to JavaScript makes it easy to do something that looks like it should work, but probably won't here. So what I might want to do is just call a function. It's like render details. If I do that, I'm not going to be able to know what details I'm rendering. If I just do render details. I might want to pass it the ramen, because I have that object, but that's not going to work, because add event listener wants a function here, not a function call. Unless that function returns another function that it's going to call, that's not going to do me any good. So what I do need to do here is handle it with a function. And so I'm just going to write a little function here that says, hey, take the event. We're not really using it, but we're going to call that with this ramen. And so the tricky part is like, it's kind of like thinking too much about walking. If you do this, it might work. If you think about it too much, then you have to think about like, okay, this ramen variable is in scope for this function, and when I pass it into here, is it out of scope when they click it because I've rendered other things? It does this because normally this would just go away after this function is over. And the reason this works is because of something called a closure, fancy computer science word for data that sticks around until you don't need it anymore, basically, in a scope. So since we have written this function here that uses this data that was passed in to render ramen, that is part of that. So of that function. And so we can't get rid of function. We can't forget that variable as long as we're holding on to it with that event listener, which doesn't make a lot of sense when you say it out loud until you understand more. And I don't expect anyone here to understand more. Just know that you can do this as long as you're passing something to a function that you're declaring. It will hang around until that function goes away for whatever reason. Am I lying? Maybe. Let's find out. Let's write this function. Function is going to call render details. It's going to take a ramen here, and this ramen is different than this ramen because they are two different functions. That ramen only exists in that function unless we pass it to a function and there's the closure and but still it's not called ramen. It's just that piece of data programming. Brains. Cool. Let's see what happens here. The thing I want is, well, I want to put the picture up there, right? So let's just see if this works. I'm going to console log the ramen image, I guess, right? So in theory, when I click on an image, it's going to, so let's see, let's talk through this. Got my data, got my ramens. Each time I got a ramen, I put the picture up and I attach the function to that picture that says, when you click on this, use this data to do something with. And the something with that we're going to do with that data is console log it here. If I did everything right, we should get a different image here each time. Kojiro. Yeah, okay, great. So I didn't lie this time. No promises for the future. So this works. So we have a function that we can do stuff with the thing that we clicked with. Great, fantastic start, and probably the hardest part of it, I think. So now we just want to throw the data in here. I'm just going to copy this down here so I can refer to it. And again, you can, since this is a kind of static piece of HTML, you could do all of your get element by IDs up here and make them global constants. Totally works, not a problem. I'm going to rule to myself and put them in here so they're defined close to where they're being used. So let's go ahead and do that. In fact, I'm gonna do something different and explain it as I go along. So here I'm doing equal document get element by ID. The thing. Let's see, right here I'm gonna do. Let's see. Well, let's get my ramen detail. Ramen detail div equals document get element by ID. Ramen detail. Cool. That's the second time I've done that. And here's a bunch of classes. Oh, I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Here's where you would do some selectors to get that. There's nothing in the requirements that says I can't change the HTML. So I'm going to, instead of doing a selector on ramen detail and then the class, classes are for styling. Classes are for styling. They're for CSS styling. If you absolutely need to grab a bunch of classes with a selector, rule one, it works great. If there's one single thing on a page that is unique, it can have a class for styling. That's great. If you are hooking it into JavaScript, I recommend having an ID. And you know what? That can even be the same thing as the class. It looks repetitive, and it is. It is picky. You could definitely just do a query selector on detail, image, name, and restaurant. I can't bring myself to do that. So I'm going to add some IDs here. And in fact, I'm going to go one step further. Ramen name and restaurant name. Because that says what they are, right? Name could be anything. I don't know what this is. Maybe you have users that are registered. Is there a name in there? Maybe. So I want to call these things exactly what they are. So when I refer to it later, I don't have to do too much thinking, because there's one thing I hate, is thinking. So now I'm not even going to bother with ramen detail at all. I'm going to select on these three things here. So I'm just going to copy this over here so I can look at them again. So now I have detail, image, ramen name, and restaurant name. So let me just do this here. I don't have to keep it. Detail, image, and restaurant name. And because I'm doing it this way, this allows me to take a little shortcut. This is just JavaScript, right? You can do whatever you like. It's not special because whatever. So you can write code that is not requested specifically if it makes your life easier. We've already done that, right? We've written these functions instead of just doing it in line. And so the thing that I'm thinking here is that I'm getting an element by ID up here. I'm getting an element by ID here. I'm going to do it 3 more times. Document.get element by ID is a mouthful and a fingerful, and my fingers are old and tired, and I want to type as little as possible. So what I'm going to do is, since I'm doing this thing a bunch of times, that seems like a great candidate for refactoring. So I'm actually going to write a little function here. I'm just going to call it, I know, EL for element. Element's going to take a element name, and all it's going to do is return document get element by ID element name. So now I can replace anywhere I'd say document.get element by ID with EL. And in fact, I don't even do this one at all anymore because I'm getting these directly. So let's see, const detail image EL, boom. Const ramen name equals EL, boom. And this is an optional thing that I'm doing. You can type it out every time. You can put them up top every time. You can use a query selector if you want to. As long as it works, it's all good. Cool. So now I have 3 elements. I'm going to get rid of that. I did that. Now I have, in theory, 3 elements. And in fact, let me check something. Since I just junked up the code here and changed stuff around, I'm pretty confident that's going to work, but I don't want to write a whole bunch of code and realize that I broke something else. So when I refactor, oh, there we go. When I refactor, I want to go back and make sure my old code still works the same way it did. Looks like it does. Cool. So I feel like that was good, and it both saved some typing, and now it's a little bit easier to read. In my opinion, everyone has a different opinion about what's easy for them. So do what works for you. That said, I have some stuff to do here. So a couple things 4 things to do. Right? I need to set the image source. I need to set the alt tag because accessibility is very important. I need to set the ramen name. I need to set the restaurant name. Cool. And maybe later on we'll have a restaurant address, and now we don't have to refactor that name. So cool. I'm just gonna go ahead and do this. I have my ramen here, and I have my elements here. This feels like it should be a cakewalk here. So let's try that. Detail image source equals ramen image. Detail image alt equals, what does our data look like? Our data looks like name. Great. Ramen name. Our ramen name also. We need, oh, that's not right. Ramen name I would probably want to call these divs, but I'm not going to go back and change them now. Ramen name, text content I'll use. You can do text content, you can do inner HTML, you can do inner text. I like text content and I change my mind often, so they'll all work just fine. And restaurant name, text content equals ramen, I think it was restaurant. Format. I feel like that's gonna do it. I'm like 90% sure. Let's find out. No syntax errors. When I click, it feels like it did it, right? Is there something I'm missing? Oh yeah, ratings and comments. Did it ask me to do that though? All the info. Okay, fine. And where it says insert comment here and insert rating here. Great. So we're going to do a couple more grabs. We have a rating and we have a single comment for each one. That's fine. So let's go ahead and see what those look like. Yeah, alt is the alt text right here. Alt text is alt is a property on an image, whether it's a HTML tag or element. Alt is the image that's displayed if we cannot see the image. Sometimes it comes up on a hover, sometimes not. But basically, when this will look like this, right? It looks like da 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 alt that. So when this page is read by a screen reader or some other thing, or someone has their images turned off for whatever reason, lots of reasons, they will see a descriptive name of what that is. So that's the alt text property. I recommend, and if you have your editor set up very picky, it will yell at you if you don't have it, especially when we get to React. It'll yell at images that don't have alt tags, because alt is super important, not only for accessibility, which is very, very important, but also for discoverability. It is technically optional. I highly recommend putting it in, and it's not that much effort to put it in, especially when you get to making projects and whatnot. Does anyone know who the largest non-cited user of the internet is? Any guesses?
Google.
Google. The largest non-cited user of the internet is Google and their web spider searchers. So if you don't have alt tags, Google can't currently look at every image on your page and know what it is. So it makes it easier for people with sight impairment. It makes it easier for search engines to discover you. It is very important, and I recommend always putting it in. That said, the image should show up if you don't. It's like rule 1.5-ish. Cool. Let's see. We want to add a rating here. And we have a rating in our ramen, so we can grab that by ID. Amazing. And we have a P ID. Amazing. Great. So rating display and comment display. And let's just grab them here. Hey, I can use my fancy thing. And let's change that part. Boop. Comment display. You can shift option arrow up and down to duplicate a line too. And now I just want to set the text content for both of those, right? Rating display, text content equals ramen. I think it was rating. If it's not, we'll find out soon enough. Comment display, text content equals comment. If I was going to be more picky, which I am, but I'm not going to act on it, I would probably rename some of these variables just so they match up. But I'm not going to do that right now. Does this work? 6 out of 10, 8 out of 10, do by the hype, absolute fave. I feel like that works. Does that satisfy everything in here? Looks like it does. Cool. So we have added a click handler to each of the things that we added there. And we have used that to kick off a function that populates our display with the data from the thing that was clicked on. And again, notice that it is the data that we used to render the thing. We didn't slap all that information into like a div there or in the image or whatever. We're rendering that from data instead of trying to pull stuff out of the page. So that's our second deliverable done and done. Any questions before we go on? Everything super clear. Okay, I believe you. Cool. Let's go ahead and look at our last thing. 12 minutes. Who knows? Maybe. Create a new ramen after submitting the new ramen form. The new ramen should be added to the ramen menu div. Does not need to persist. Okay, I'm going to do this the fast and easy way first, and then talk about maybe show off another more sustainable way to do it. Cool. So first job, again, looking at this one deliverable that has a bunch of things in it. We want to create a new ramen after submitting the new ramen form. First thing we want to do is handle submitting the new ramen form, breaking it down. So we want to be able to do something when we submit the form. Great. Let's look at our HTML. Our form is new ramen. Great. So I'm just going to write a function now before hooking it up. Well, am I lying? Yeah. I think I'm going to hook up the function up here before I fetch even. So I'm going to use, I don't even need to assign to a variable or a constant. I'm going to say, get that element, and it's called new ramen. I would probably call it new ramen form, but that's fine. So EL, that's the same as doing document.get element by ID, new ramen. And now we just have that element. So I'm going to go ahead and add an event listener right here. And we are looking for a submit event. And importantly, and I will still occasionally make this mistake, what throws a submit event? The form. If you put the event handler on the submit button, it will not work. So a top tip from someone who has done that a bunch. So when it gets submitted, I want to call a function, and that function is going to take the event. And I'm just going to call it create new ramen, I guess. See how that works. So let's write that function. And it's going to take an event. And for right now, I'm just going to console log the event just to have something there. And something is going to not work here. I'm sure you know what it is already. If we hit create, it just reloads the page because we're doing a submit, and a submit by default does a post and reloads the page. So we actually want to prevent the default behavior on that event so it does not do the thing. Great. Console is not a function. I don't care. We know it works. So great. We have the actually, let's do console log event target. How about that? So now we know, here's some stuff in the form. We'll submit the form, and there's our target. Great. So the target is our form. The event target is the thing that throws the event, which in this case is our form. So we want to get the name, restaurant, image, rating, and comment from that. And luckily, they are all named appropriately. So the name of the input type is available on that form as a property. So we can say if we want to, the target name. And if we put in, it's going to do the input, and we want to give it the value of that input. Awesome. So we have access to the name, and let's do the same thing for the restaurant image, rating, comment. Yeah, I'm just going to grab those. I don't know. Yeah, let's do that. Well, let's think about what we want to do with it first. What we want to do with it is create a new object, right? We want to create a new object that looks like this: ID, name, restaurant, rating, comment. We're not going to generate an ID right now because that's going to come from the database later, but we'll leave the ID off. So we're just going to take the name, restaurant, image, rating, comment. Name, image, restaurant, rating, comment. And put those in a new object. So I'm just going to go ahead and say new ramen is the new object, and that's going to have a name. Equal name is the target name value. Rating is E. Look at so much typing. Probably a better way to do this, right? Target. Restaurants. Comments. There was one other thing. Image, right? And image. Probably a much better way to do that. I'm not gonna do it right now. Cool. So let's just console log out that. Boop. And yeah. Does this work? Name. Oh, restaurant sushi is good. Hey, it's the same image as this one. Rating is a 5, of course, and comment rar. Cool. If I did everything right, that will nope, undefined. Value. What did I do? Oh yeah. Where's that error? Line 45. Line 45 is the comment. Of course it is. What's different about the comments?
It's comment dash something, so the
Yeah.
dot notation's not gonna work there.
Yeah, so that is a new comment. I hate it, but so instead of changing that, I'm going to do that. We can't use the dot on it, so we need to use the brackets. New comment, and it's gonna be a string. Poor naming on our HTML developers part. I don't want to type all that in again. It's a 5, and comment is that. There we go. Great. Long live the Gojira rule. Cool. So now we know we have an object. We can do stuff with it. So now we have to go through all of this thing again, right? We have to make a new element, and we have to go down here and we have to make a new element. We have to add it to the thing. We have to add a click handler and all that. So that's a lot of typing. Oh wait, no, we wrote a function to do that for us. How smart of us. So we can just say render ramen, new ramen. And since that in theory looks like the objects that we're getting, maybe it will just work. Let's find out. Nope. Man, give me that image. One. There's our comment. Let's see if it adds it up there. Hey, it did. Look at that. And if we click on it, there's our thing. Breaking things into function, not so bad. Now that because we know, and if we were interacting with the server more, doing posts and getting stuff and updating whatnot, we would want a way to easily render that one ramen in there. Right now, it's only adding it to the end of that list. In the advanced deliverables, we might want to figure out a different way to keep our data, so we are rendering that list entirely each time we change it. But that is for another time, I think. The last thing I did was, I collapsed this. Was that it? Just getting these out of the way here. So if I want to,
Sorry,
say-
I was just gonna
Yeah, go
ask, I got through console logging the object and then I didn't see what you did after that, what function, and I wanted to.
oh yeah. So we wrote this function, render ramen. So when we iterate through the data, we can take each data object and that will add it to our div and add the click handler and all that stuff. Since we already have that written, we can just use it here with the data that we are creating here. So we're making a new object on the fly, and we're using our same old function to render it to the page and add the click handler and do all that stuff. Does that make sense? Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I believe that satisfies the last of the core objectives. Any questions about any of this? this was super fast run through, so I don't expect all of the details to stick with you necessarily.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you run a post
Mhm.
post request, do you need does that mean you don't need e.prevent default?
You do in this case, because we're kind of using this Ajax as an old word. We're using a single page app kind of idiom, right? So we don't want the page to reload every time we do a thing. So we do want to prevent the default. We're going to prevent the default so it doesn't reload. We want to create it, and instead of here rendering it here, and this is what I would do. I would post it to the server, and then in the dot, then that comes back from that. When it gets back and we know it's been posted correctly, then I would add it to the list up here.
Okay, because yeah, I did it a different way with my create new ramen essentially. I did a fetch and I did a post request.
Mhm.
And I sent in like my new ramen object.
Yeah.
And so it like stays.
Yeah, so the only thing you'd want to do is when you get the response there, update it. In general, we don't want to reload our pages unless we have to, which means we're going to be preventing the default pretty much all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, if it works, it works. Cool. Other questions?
I'm pretty sure my code looks exactly the same as yours, and I'm still getting my page refreshing, even though I definitely have the prevent default in there.
I bet it doesn't look exactly the same then. So are we adding the event listener up top to the form?
Yes, and I wanted to check and make sure this line looks the same, but it does, other than I used single quotes instead of double quotes, but that shouldn't matter.
Yeah, as long as you're adding
Event listener.
form and passing that function in, and then that function, is it taking the event as a parameter there?
Yes. Oh.
Is it?
I didn't have the double parentheses.
Yep. That was my next question.
Duh.
So easy to forget. And it's not like it's something we do every once in a while. And if you have to look it up for sure.
Yeah.
I definitely something that I fall down on sometimes too. So it's always learning, always learning. Awesome. That works for you then?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. Yeah, attention to detail is the devil, right? Cool. What other questions do we have? Anything that's not super clear? Yeah, go for it.
When you create a new ramen, are like your data entries, are they like getting deleted after?
They're not. No, I haven't done that. Since we have the event target, we can do that really easily. We can do event target, which is the form. We can do clear on that. And that will clear out the form after we're done. Without that, they'll just stick around. You have to delete it manually, which is no good. Great question. What else? Feeling a little bit better after going through this? The numbers go up at all?
I'm
I mean,
up
it's
to
easy
like
to
a
follow.
3.
Say again?
I said, I think it's easy to follow when you do it, but
Yeah. way easier.
it all makes sense. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, of
That-
course. Yeah, and it's, I mean, again, it goes back to kind of the fluency thing, right? It's a lot easier to read and understand a language than it is to hear and understand it than it is to write in it or speak in it. And that's, just hanging out with people that talk JavaScript all day, and then doing that. So if you and this, it's, some people see learning as like a thing, like someone tells it and you get it or you don't, and that's not at all how it works. Like you can kind of understand the general thing, or understand specifically, but not be practiced at it and not know where to go to do it. There's like so many different moving parts and levels of understanding this kind of stuff. It's hard to say like I get this or I don't get it. you
There's a
practice.
reason mastering something is more about repetition than learning more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So put in your 10,000 hours between now and tomorrow, and you'll be good.
Question.
Yeah.
If we do want to practice this, because like this challenge, like we've, like run through it and we've reviewed it.
Yeah.
Can we, I don't know, how would you recommend we practice this between today and tomorrow then?
Oh yeah. So basically you do what we did here, and then do it again.
So just start from scratch.
Yeah. I would just delete it and start over. If you want to get fancier with it, you could make yourself a new branch in Git and just say like, hey, I'm going to Git check out new branch and practice one. I still practice right. One, great. And now my stuff is on a new branch. And if I do the stuff on that branch, when I go and check out main again, it'll be back to the way it was when I started. And you can make as many branches as you want. But it's just as easy just to delete it and start over. I think that's my recommended practice, just build and burn. Or even blow away the whole directory and just clone it down again. Whatever you need to do to start over again from scratch, and just keep doing it again from scratch until it's second nature. And then we'll learn more stuff.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for asking. That's a good question. Awesome. Other questions?
Sorry, real quick. My eTarget.clear, it's giving me another error saying eTarget.clear is not a function. I try to put something in.
Is eTarget clear a function? Is eTarget clear a function? I don't know. Did I lie? Maybe. Clear. Pretty sure it's a clear. Yeah. Browsing. Clear form. Console clear. Come on, buddies. There. Reset. That's what it is. Reset. See, you don't trust me. Sometimes I lie. It's reset. Awesome. Good catch. Other questions? Cool. This is all the stuff you need to know for the code challenge tomorrow. It's going to be very similar to this, suspiciously similar to this. So if you practice this and feel good about this and understand it for the most part, or at least have an idea where to start, you'll be in good shape. If not, totally cool. You have plenty of time. We have a retake. So no stress tomorrow. Just the best thing you can do now is just keep redoing this from scratch, either watching along with a video, which I'll post after I upload it, or doing it by yourself. The more repetitions you can get in, the faster you can get, and the better time you're going to have tomorrow. Last call for questions.
This probably doesn't have anything to do with it, but with the rating, there's like an up and down button.
Yeah, I think
How
that's
did-
for advanced.
Okay.
Yeah, advanced
Just
level.
wondering how that got in there.
Yeah, so you would put event handlers on the up and down arrows and do updates to the data with those. We can talk about that later if we want to. For right now, feels good. Get on here. Where's Zoom? Hey Zoom, what's up? Let's stop sharing. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, practice. This video will be available. I'll post a link in the channel, and I don't think I have a playlist on my channel for this class yet, so I'll make one of those. So all the stuff will be in one place. And of course, I'll be around to answer questions. Matt will be around. Yeah, take a little break. Brains should be full now. Have lunch, and I will catch y'all later. Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.